Welcome to List Lab. Today we're counting down 10 suspicious, unexplained, or strongly disputed deaths from history, cases where the paperwork ends, but the questions do not. Every story here sticks to what is documented and to what later investigations have been able to confirm while admitting what remains unknowable. If you enjoy calm, careful deep dives, subscribe to List Lab and tell us in the comments which mystery stays with you most as we count down from 10 to 1. Number 10. Tycho Brahe's last banquet. On the 24th of October, 1601, the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe died in Prague after a sudden illness that lasted around 11 days. Rumors of poisoning appeared not long after. He worked with early medicines and alchemical substances, and he lived in the royal court where rivalry could be dangerous. One long-lived suspicion even touched his assistant, Johannes Kepler, who later published the planetary tables based largely on Brahe's observations. In 2010, researchers exhumed Brahe's remains to test the most famous claim that he had died of mercury poisoning. Analysis of hair, bones, and other samples showed mercury levels too low to have caused his death. That result removed the simplest explanation, but it did not prove a natural cause. Some medical summaries still consider kidney failure a possibility, and there is no way to test for every other poison. 4 centuries later, Brahe's final days remain a puzzle, one where science answered part of the question, but not the whole story. Number 9. Pope John Paul I, 33 days and a quiet end. On the 28th of September 1978, Pope John Paul I was found dead in his bed after only 33 days as head of the Catholic Church. The official explanation was a heart attack, and that remains the most widely accepted cause. But no autopsy was performed, so the kind of medical certainty that settles a disputed death was never collected. In the first hours after the announcement, even basic details were reported inconsistently, including who had discovered the body. That early confusion created space for rumors that never fully disappeared. Later Vatican accounts described the death as sudden and natural, based on doctors' reports. Still, the lack of an autopsy leaves the story resting on a gap that can never be completely filled. It remains one of those cases where the key evidence was never gathered and the argument can never truly be closed. Number 8. Edgar Allan Poe's missing week. On the 3rd of October, 1849, the writer Edgar Allan Poe was found in a confused state in Baltimore and taken to hospital. Witnesses described him as disheveled and wearing clothes that did not seem to be his. He could not explain how he had ended up there, and he died 4 days later. The real problem for historians is that key medical records were lost, leaving only newspaper accounts and later recollections. Even those sources contradict one another. Modern theories range from alcohol-related illness to infections such as rabies, and to the possibility that he was a victim of election day vote fraud known as cooping. The coping theory could explain the strange clothing and timing, but it remains circumstantial. Poe's death endures as a mystery where each explanation sounds convincing, until it has to account for every strange detail at once. Number 7. Ludwig II of Bavaria and the lake that wouldn't speak. On the 13th of June 1886, King Ludwig II of Bavaria went for an evening walk with his physician near Lake Starnberg. A few hours later, both men were found dead in the water. The official verdict was suicide by drowning. But several details complicated that explanation. Ludwig was considered a strong swimmer. The water where he was found was reportedly shallow, and the autopsy suggested there was no water in his lungs. No external injuries were recorded, and later reports said drowning could not be proven beyond doubt. These facts do not confirm murder, but they leave the official story feeling incomplete. The doctor's death makes the mystery deeper still, because any explanation must account for both men ending up dead in the same place. Without decisive forensic proof, the king's final moments remain a haunting image: one monarch, one doctor, and a silent lake. Number 6. The Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short. On the 15th of January 1947, the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short was found in Los Angeles. It became one of the most famous unsolved murder cases in American history. Investigators quickly realized she had been killed elsewhere and moved to the scene. That suggested planning rather than impulse. There were signs of precision in the injuries, and agents were even asked to look into medical students who might have had the necessary knowledge. The case produced fragments of evidence, including a letter believed to be from the killer, but fingerprints on it did not match any in official files. With no confirmed suspect, the investigation became a maze of theories and false leads. Nearly 8 decades later, the central question remains unanswered. Number 5. Natalie Wood's drowning and the questions that returned. On the 29th of November 1981, actress Natalie Wood died in the water of Santa Catalina Island after a night on a yacht with her husband and 2 other men. For decades, the death was treated as accidental. Then investigators reopened the case in 2011. In 2012, her death certificate was amended. The cause changed from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Investigators pointed to bruising and to conflicting witness accounts about the final moments before she entered the water. In 2018, authorities named her husband, Robert Wagner, as a person of interest. He denied wrongdoing, and no charges were filed. The official cause remains undetermined, and the last minutes of her life were never fully reconstructed. Number 4. Dag Hammarskjöld and the Crash in the Dark. In September 1961, United Nations Secretary-General Dag Hammarskjöld died when his plane crashed near Ndola in what is now Zambia. All 16 people on board were killed. Early investigations leaned toward pilot error, but suspicions of external interference never disappeared. In recent years, new inquiries have examined previously undisclosed material. Reports have suggested it remains plausible that the crash was caused by an external attack, sabotage, or even unintentional human error. Investigators believe crucial information may still sit in intelligence archives in several countries. This makes the case unusual among historical mysteries. The answer may already exist, locked away in files that have not yet been released. Number 3. Olof Palme, a killing without a trial. On the 28th of February 1986, Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was shot dead while walking through central Stockholm. It became one of the largest investigations in the country's history, but no one was ever convicted. In 2020, prosecutors closed the case, naming a man called Stig Engström as the prime suspect. But because he had already died, there could be no trial. Officials pointed to witness descriptions and contradictions in his account. They also admitted that the passage of time had destroyed many investigative opportunities. The result is a rare situation. The state names a suspect, but the legal system never tests the case in court. With no trial and no recovered weapon, the assassination remains unresolved. Number 2. J.F.K, the case that still releases new files. On the 22nd of November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. The Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, but a later congressional investigation suggested Kennedy was probably killed as part of a conspiracy, even while agreeing that the fatal shots came from behind. A major source of doubt has always been secrecy. Records have been released gradually over decades, and new documents continue to appear. In 2025, thousands of additional files were reported and transferred for declassification. Each new release does not necessarily rewrite history, but it does raise fresh questions about what investigators knew and when. More than 60 years later, the case still feels unfinished. Number 1. Alexander the Great's last illness. In June 323 BCE, Alexander the Great died in Babylon at the age of 32, after a severe illness lasting around 2 weeks. Because no remains are available for a modern autopsy, the exact cause has never been established. Some modern doctors suggest typhoid fever based on descriptions of high fever and abdominal pain. Others point to diseases carried by mosquitoes, while some historians still consider the possibility of poisoning. One theory suggests a plant toxin that could cause a long, gradual decline, but it cannot prove whether any drink was deliberately poisoned. Ancient sources do not even agree on the exact symptoms. Fever, the one detail repeated most often, does not fit most poisoning scenarios. So Alexander's death remains at the intersection of history and medicine, powerful motives, vivid accounts, and no body to settle the question. Those were 10 deaths where history still holds back a final answer. Which one did you find most intriguing, and what details stayed with you? Leave a comment, and if you enjoyed documentary-style countdowns, like the video and subscribe to List Lab for more mysteries from the past.